Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Thursday edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, Amanda Head, reporting to you from the nation's capital here in Washington, D.C. My co-host and Just the News editor-in-chief, John Solomon, is out on assignment tonight, but the news just has not slowed down at all, has it? Last night, ABC Disney announced shortly after the show ended that they would be indefinitely suspending Jimmy Kimmel's show after comments that he made about the alleged assassin of Charlie Kirk. And honestly, if you were just watching CNN or MSNBC or any of the mainstream media, you would have thought that the Republic was crumbling down and burning before our very eyes. They devoted wall-to-wall coverage of this. They made a much bigger deal about this than the assassination of Charlie Kirk, for example, and claimed that this was one of the most brazen attacks on free speech that the country has ever seen, except for the one that happened last week on a college campus in Utah where Charlie Kirk was assassinated for standing up for free speech. But the media also used it as an excuse to claim once again that the right is fascist and authoritarian. All after that same rhetoric is exactly what got Charlie Kirk killed. So let me play you one of the short clips from Kimmel that got him into this whole mess in the first place, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what happened after.
We had some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
My goodness. So that is one of the things that he said regarding Charlie Kirk's murder, and it was, of course, a lie. The shooter is not even remotely MAGA. In fact, everything that we can tell from him that we have learned from investigators is that he was extremely left-wing. But after heavy outrage from the public and broadcasters like Nexstar and Sinclair basically saying, you know what, that's it, enough is enough. Then we've got this other thought that I want to show you from Brendan Carr. Check it out.
Broadcast TV is different. We're on a cable show right now. You don't have an FCC license. You don't have an obligation to serve the public interest. Podcasts don't either. Stand-up comedians, whether they're on lots of forms of communications, don't. And Kimmel is free to do that. But if you have a broadcast TV license, that means that you have something that very few people have. And you're excluding other people from having access to that valuable public resource. And it comes with an obligation to serve the public interest.
My goodness, and that was enough for the left to cry victim once again after doing much worse to conservatives and the First Amendment for absolutely years. So remember, when the Biden administration actually worked with social media companies during COVID to silence opinions of regular Americans that they did not like on the vaccine and a whole host of other things, it's many times worse than what happened here with Kimmel and an actual attack on free speech. But worse still, Democrats and the media were applauding this when it happened to conservatives. For example, here's Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez after Tucker Carlson was fired from Fox News.
Tucker Carlson is out at Fox News. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. Deplatforming works, and it is important. And there you go. Good things can happen.
Well, that's good to know. Deplatforming works and good things can happen. That was AOC, a sitting U.S. Congresswoman, praising a broadcaster for firing an employee for free speech that she just didn't like. And I'm going to do you one better. Here is Senator Chuck Schumer calling for the firing of Tucker Carlson before it happened.
Rupert Murdoch, who has admitted they were lies and said he regretted it, has a special obligation to stop Tucker Carlson from going on tonight, now that he's seen how he has perverted and slimed the truth, and from letting him go on again and again and again.
And even Jimmy Kimmel himself celebrated this sort of thing that we are talking about right now. Here he is on air rejoicing after Tucker Carlson was fired.
Fox News has severed bow ties with Tucker Carlson. After all these years, they are parting ways, which means he was fired. I mean, that's really what parting ways means. Tucker couldn't be reached for comment. He's already on a plane to Moscow to meet with his manager. But what a shock. I mean, what an absolutely delightful shock this is.
Parting ways? Well, you would know, Jimmy. You're about to find out what that legalese is coming from your higher up. So while the media spent morning to evening attempting to spin the narrative that free speech is over in the United States because of poor little Jimmy Kimmel, remember that they all, to a man, celebrated and glorified deplatforming on the right, not only saying that it wasn't an attack on free speech, but also saying it was the only way to save democracy in America. These people have absolutely no shame, and they are looking for any reason whatsoever to change the narrative from the murder of Charlie Kirk to make themselves look like the victims. Do not let them do it, please. All right, so with that said, it's time to get to our very first guest of tonight, Congressman from Indiana, Marlin Stutzman. Congressman, thanks so much for being here.
Good morning, or good afternoon, evening, Amanda. Great to be with you.
Great to have you, sir. And the media is trying to do this switcheroo. Even a congresswoman from Texas today on the House floor tried to make it happen. She tried to turn this into something that it wasn't. They're continuing to try this, but it's not working this time, is it?
No, it's not. And you know what we all need to remember, Amanda, is that this is a bit of show business. And so when all of a sudden these companies realize that there's a show or this broadcast on this late night show with Jimmy Kimmel, which I think is a bad show. I would try to watch it from time to time, and it's just a bad show. But the fact that they knew their audience wasn't going to receive it well. I find it interesting, Amanda, Brian Williams was fired for lying. You had Dan Rather, who was let go from CBS, and you have more on the left. I remember one time, of course, the Tucker Carlson situation is the one that they always like to talk about. But I remember even when the Robertsons from Duck Dynasty, they were tried to cancel them, and they were off the air for a little bit. The family said, "Fine, we're all off," rather than just Phil. Pretty soon they brought him back because he didn't do anything wrong, and they also knew that it was good for the audience because the audience liked him. And so I look at it a little bit from that perspective, and I find it ironic that they were pretty quick to just let him go, because I think they knew they had probably other opportunities and better options than what Jimmy's show was actually producing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when you have workhorses on the right, like poor Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, acting NSA director, National Archivist, still, I believe, in charge of USAID. A lot of people are like, well, just put it, Marco Rubio can pinch hit, but you've got workhorses on the right, people like you who are willing to do the work. And I want to use this as a segue to get into the work of Congress, because you guys are already planning ahead for what's to come in this CR. In light of what happened to Charlie Kirk last week, I think that there are going to be a lot of calls for protections and maybe even investigations into groups that continue to always have some type of connection to these types of violent situations. Tell us about what's on your platter and what you're focusing on in this CR.
Yeah, well, obviously it's difficult to get any sort of budget bill past the Senate. We could get it passed in the House because we only need 51%, or 50 plus 1 to pass the bill. But in the Senate, because of the 60-vote cloture rule, you have to get several Democrats to agree. And Chuck Schumer and the Democrats just won't do that. I mean, they might be able to get 1 or 2 Democrats to do it, but they just won't get there, so it won't even happen. So that's why the continuing resolution, which I think is the right move right now. In fact, you know what? It's interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see how the Democrats act through all this and handle all of this, because if they shut the government down, President Trump actually has much more authority and power when we don't pass a budget, because he's then in charge of running the government rather than Congress. And so the Democrats are in a really bad spot. They will, of course, want to increase spending. They want to, of course, increase taxes. But this is, I think, the right strategy that President Trump has asked for, is that we do an extension. If we can get the appropriations bills passed, then we can, of course, move as many of those across the finish line as possible, but it'll be difficult to pass in the Senate. But I think, one thing that's important, you mentioned Charlie Kirk's death. Some of the investigations that are going to take place and need to take place is just the deep dark web, the deep state that we have talked about a lot, and we've always been suspicious of it. And now that even Senator Grassley has announced this Arctic frost program that the Democrats had when they were in office. So I think that's the other important thing for us to be, paying a lot of attention to is this is putting our kids in a very dangerous spot. And, who are they talking to online? And the whole gaming industry and the dark spots of the web that are very dangerous for our kids. So my hope is that we're going to have a lot of conversations about security, there's going to be members of Congress that want to talk about more security for members of Congress and for elected officials across the country and high-profile individuals. But we need to talk about the safety and security for our kids from the information that they receive online.
Absolutely. And just touching on Arctic Frost, the investigation that you were talking about, spying on over 100 conservative-leaning or GOP organizations. Congressman, I think back to Lois Lerner and the IRS scandal. And granted, after that scandal, you still were kind of hard-pressed to find Democrats who would denounce it. But there were plenty of Republicans at the time who said, we're never going to let this happen again. This can't let it happen again. And here we are.
Yeah, no, that's right. And that's why I'm so grateful for President Trump and his administration. The way that they weaponized the DOJ against President Trump, the way they went after him. I mean, he was on the receiving end of this. And honestly, Amanda, there's not too many presidential candidates on the Republican side that could actually handle it because they would have buried them financially into legal issues, and they just wouldn't have ever been able to recover. But God bless President Trump for being willing to spend the money and fight these fights. He just filed a lawsuit against NBC, and he's taken on the big media giants for the roles that they've played. And so, I remember back when he started calling them fake news, and you know what? It's proven out to be true, and they just continued to push these false narratives, like we saw with Jimmy Kimmel. And the fact that the FCC chairman even had to say anything is disappointing. That Disney just didn't make that decision, because as soon as you hear that and you watch the news, you obviously know that his narrative was completely false and lying to the American people.
Right. I want to ask you, because there is an organization out there who I think is very deserving of scrutiny, and President Trump apparently agrees when it comes to Antifa and designated them a domestic terror organization. This is a group that has burned down cities, burned down police precincts, killed people, maimed people. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And Congressman, I still can't find a Democrat out there who will roundly and resoundingly denounce them. What are you hearing from Democrats when it comes to that classification?
They're still defending, this narrative that, it happens on both sides. And I'm sorry. I mean, and I'll say this just because I think it's important for those of us on the right, anybody on the right claims to be a Republican, responding in violence is absolutely the wrong thing to do. It's just not proper at all. We condemn the left. We condemn this assassin for shooting Charlie Kirk, the assassination attempt on President Trump, the shooter up in Minnesota on the Democrat state representatives that were assassinated. All of it needs to be condemned. And yet they just try to find this soft spot like, well, we need to protest peacefully. But if we remember back in 2020, they were burning cities down. I mean, if this would have been a liberal commentator that would have been assassinated instead of Charlie Kirk, I mean, who knows what would be happening in the country right now. So there is a double standard. And I just believe that we as conservatives need to continue to pursue righteousness. We need to pursue what's right in this country. And we have to call out what's wrong. And when people say the untruth, that we need to call them out for it.
Yeah. Well, to borrow a phrase from Charlie Kirk, during the summer of love in 2020, Floydapalooza, as he used to call it, it was all fiery but mostly peaceful protests. We all remember that phrase that they used. Sir, before I let you go, I want to ask you, there is a vigil for Charlie Kirk taking place in one of Indiana's many beautiful little towns in Fort Wayne, Indiana. As I understand it, you guys have only had the RSVP open for about 48 hours, and already 3,000 people, or over 3,000 people, have responded.
Yeah, I mean, it's just incredible to see the outpouring of where people are at. It'd be so easy for people to just want to go hide and stay safe and stay out of the public, because of what's happened in Utah. But I think the response is different, and we're seeing it obviously with TPUSA's inquiries to start chapters of over 50,000 inquiries. And here we have, these vigils, prayer vigils, people of faith getting together and I think they want to be together. They want to just let the world know that we are not going to be silenced, that we value our religious freedom, we value our freedom of speech. But it's inspiring, honestly, because people aren't going to be quiet. And I think that actually there's going to be so many people across this country that are going to stand up and be bold for what they believe in America, and that America is good.
I think so too, and I think for this youngest generation, seeing Charlie Kirk shot, I mean, the video unfortunately went viral 1,000 times over, and seeing that happen with their own eyes, I think has left an indelible mark on their hearts and their minds, and I hope that the response to that is spreading brush fires of freedom in this country, and it seems like they're doing that with those chapter requests. It's amazing to see, and I know a lot of them are going to be there in Indiana.
Yeah, it really is. I told my son, who was a TPUSA chapter president at Liberty University, said, Dad, this is our 9/11. And I said, well, it is. I said, but sadly, this enemy is from within our country rather than outside of our country. Both horrific incidences, but this is an enemy from within, and it's one that has to be faced and defeated.
Yeah, look, someone who is standing up for civil rights, especially for the youngest generation, someone who spoke truth to power, and someone who was a minority within his generation. That was Charlie Kirk. That was also MLK. So you think
That's
about
right.
the long-reaching effects of MLK's assassination and what he stood for, and I don't think it's too far off to say that Charlie Kirk is going to be regarded in the same way. Indiana Congressman Marlin Stutzman, always a joy to have you here tonight, sir. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Amanda.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, after the break, we're going to talk more about President Trump designating Antifa a terrorist organization. It's about time, isn't it? That's nice.
Hey folks, President Donald Trump's not just talking about economic turbulence, he's telling you how to protect yourself from it. The strategy President Trump is using for decades to safeguard his own wealth through every crisis is sitting right there in the IRS code. While everyone else panics about market crashes and dollar devaluation, those who understand the strategy, well, they sleep soundly. Many investors are saying gold should take a larger percentage of your portfolio because of the challenging political times ahead. They're not alone. Central banks bought 1,000 tons of gold last year. They see what's coming over the horizon. American Alternative Assets created a free guide showing you and I how to implement Trump's IRS strategy to protect your retirement. It's the same approach the wealthy use to preserve their fortunes when currencies collapse. Call 888-615-8047. That's 888-615-8047 right now for your free 2025 Wealth Protection Guide. One more time, that's 888-615-8047. You can go visit the site I created for myself called johnlikesgold.com. I do like gold, so johnlikesgold.com. Go check it out.